Hey guys, in this video, we're going to talk about one of the more recent all-in-one ETFs, FEQT. This is going to be a fun one because usually when we're talking about all-in-ones, we generally talk about the offerings from Vanguard, iShares, and BMO, and the Fidelity offering is quite a bit different. And of course, being the 100% XEQT guy, I've gotten people curious, hey, would I switch to FEQT? And there have been people on Blossom who have made that particular switch, and let's take a look. On Fidelity's feature sheet, it's trying to promote some of the same properties that the other all-in-ones have, like lower cost, automatic rebalancing, broad exposure. I think the two exciting differences is that it's a global multi-asset strategy designed with equity factors. So those risk premiums we've been talking about on some of the more recent videos on this channel. And it's got exposure to crypto, mainly Bitcoin, because it's got in this asterisk section ranging between 1% to 10% exposure to Fidelity Advantage Bitcoin ETF. So again, for people who want factor exposure and Bitcoin exposure, this is a weapon in your arsenal to consider. But I'm going to talk about why I don't think I would make this my all-in-one. The first reason being the level of broad diversification. Now, my approach, if I were to factor tilt my portfolio and mix it up with a bunch of ETFs, will be naturally similar to what Ben Felix did when he proposed his 5-factor model portfolio, where you still have these market cap weights, so you're exposed to the entire market, and then you add these little factor ETFs to be able to tilt to certain factors. And in his case, he has 2 ETFs to tilt to small cap value, but you still have a lot of exposure to the entire market. And I'm going to jump on the Fidelity webpage to look at the underlying holdings. But first thing people notice is the MER is more than double than XEQT, which makes sense because there's rebalancing with crypto, and there's also it's a more active approach where you're targeting specific factors. So naturally, the MER should be higher. Now, scrolling down to the underlying funds, it's kind of cool to see if I spread these out, that you're targeting momentum, value, high quality, low volatility, and small cap on a global level. Now, if you open each of these ETFs individually, you can scroll down and look at their holdings. This one has 94. The value one has 95. They all have about 90, 96. US low volatility 97. Now, that adds up to roughly 400. So it seems pretty good. But when you cross match them and look for duplicates, you reduce them down to about 151 companies. 151 is smaller than even the S&P 500. So all this to say that this is a very concentrated approach, and it's not the US equities, it's throughout this ETF. And if that's something you want, then go for that. But for me, I'd rather pair these factors with a base market cap ETF. And while I'm talking about factors, I have to note for those new to them is that not everyone agrees about all the factors and how to target them. And the 3 most universally accepted, if you will, are value stocks, small cap stocks, and profitable stocks. So we see some of that in this ETF. Like I said, this ETF is more active. One of its components is the Global Small Cap Opportunities Fund, 2% MER above that. And when it talks about why invest in this fund, it's a high conviction portfolio of typically 40 to 80 small cap companies anywhere in the world. So again, it's more active, more concentrated, so definitely more risky than the XEQT, VEQT, ZEQT family. And if you're looking for that higher upside, you would go with FEQT instead. I'm on Portfolio Visualizer here, and one of the things people post on Blossom, I saw a few images, is that FEQT has done better than the more traditional all-in-ones, if you will, over the past couple of years. If you're not new to the channel, you know I don't value past performance that much because it's all about future expectations of the market. And that's why the way the fund is diversified is more important to me than that it did better than XEQT in the past. But intuitively, a lot of people think that FEQT did better because of its Bitcoin exposure. So it's important to at least look at how much of it is true. And FEQT is relatively new. It came out in 2022 in January, at least according to the website. And it did better than XEQT. And these numbers vary depending on what website you look at slightly. So it did better. It did a roughly 18% return in 2023. But if we put the Bitcoin allocation to roughly 3%, which is what it says it wants to keep it around, and we multiply 3% and the exceptional performance of Bitcoin in that year, 145% return, and the contribution of it is around 4%. So 18% of FEQT's return, 4.37 of that is due to the Bitcoin allocation. So the rest of the portfolio actually underperformed XEQT. But of course, I stay consistent. I don't value that outperformance too much because factors, it could take decades for the benefits to show up. All right, I think we can just end this video by talking about that crypto allocation and what I think about it. I think owning crypto is, of course, very controversial. There's proponents on both sides, very strong proponents. Some think it's trash. Other people think it's the future. The only thing I'll say is that for every asset class that you consider to add to your portfolio, you should consider what you think its future expected returns are. It's the correlation with the rest of the assets that you currently hold and what kind of volatility that you want your overall portfolio to have. The reason I'm in 100% stocks and I don't have any bonds, gold, or REITs is because I've considered all these factors. And because this is not an exact science, a lot of us will come to different conclusions. And I'm not going to say one of us is more right than the other. That's why I've said on Blossom that the Bitcoin allocation to me is not necessarily a positive or a negative because I'm not really sure about the expected return of Bitcoin from this point forward. But I know that the stock market, the premium of the stock market is positive. So I'd still rather be 100% stock rather than 97%. But again, comes down to preference sometimes. Anyways, I hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next one.